The sky changed on a Tuesday morning. Daniel Morrison stood inside the space station looking down at Earth. He was a commander, someone who had spent years learning how to lead people in difficult situations. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw now. Large black ships appeared above every major city on the planet. They just appeared out of nowhere, hanging in the air like dark clouds that would never move. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their surfaces were smooth and reflected light in strange ways that made Daniel's eyes hurt when he looked too long. Kate Sullivan walked over to stand beside him. She was a lieutenant who worked with communications, making sure everyone could talk to each other across long distances. Her face looked pale and worried. She had been listening to radio signals for 3 hours ever since the ships first came. They call themselves the Varix Dominion, Kate said quietly. They sent the same message to every government on Earth at the same time. They are not asking for anything. They are telling us what they want and they expect us to give it to them. Daniel turned away from the window to look at her. What do they want from us? Kate took a deep breath before answering. They want 70% of all the minerals we have left on Earth. They want our metals, our rare elements, everything valuable under the ground. They also want our water. A lot of it. In return, they promise they will not kill everyone on the planet. We have 48 hours to say yes. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel had been a soldier before he became an astronaut. He had fought in 3 wars and seen terrible things. But this was different. This was worse. Humans had spent so many years looking for life among the stars, sending peaceful messages into space, hoping someone would answer. Now someone had answered, and they came with threats instead of friendship. Down on Earth, President Victoria Hayes sat in a big meeting room with leaders from many countries. The United Nations Security Council had called an emergency session. Everyone looked scared or angry or both. A hologram in the center of the room showed pictures of the alien ships. There were 200 of them in orbit around Earth. Scientists said each ship could destroy an entire city with one shot. General Marcus Chen stood up to speak. He was in charge of the military forces. They have complete control of the space around our planet, he said. Our weapons barely scratch their shields. We already sent 3 groups of fighter pilots to test their defenses. They destroyed our best planes like they were nothing, like swatting flies. Director Samuel Park asked the question everyone was thinking. So we just give up? We hand over everything they want and hope they keep their promise not to kill us all? Victoria Hayes looked at all the information on her tablet. The Varix had told them a lot about who they were, probably because they did not see humans as a threat. They were a species that had conquered 47 other worlds across the galaxy. Earth was just another place to them, valuable only for what they could take from it. The people living here were just in the way, nothing more than an inconvenience. We need time, Hayes said firmly. Time to prepare ourselves, to organize our defenses, to find a weakness in their ships. General Chen, start moving people out of the big cities. Get as many people as possible into safe shelters underground. General Chen spoke carefully. Madam President, if we evacuate the cities, the Varix will know we plan to fight back. They might see that as a hostile act and attack us immediately. Hayes replied in a flat, hard voice. They are going to attack us no matter what we do, whether we agree to their demands or not. Whether we move people or not, they will attack. Species that come in peace do not arrive with an armada of warships and make demands. They came to take what they want, and they will kill anyone who tries to stop them. The only question is whether we die fighting or die surrendering. The room became very quiet. Everyone understood the simple math of the situation. All of Earth's military forces working together could not defeat even a small part of the Varix fleet. But surrendering meant slavery at best and complete extinction at worst. There were no good choices, only terrible ones. Deep under the mountains in Colorado, a scientist named Lisa Martinez worked frantically at her computer. She was the lead scientist on a secret project called Prometheus. For 3 years, her team had been developing a new way to make spaceships travel faster. The technology could theoretically allow ships to jump short distances through folded space. But they had only tested it on computers and small models. They had never built a real one. Now they had 48 hours to turn their theories into a real weapon. Her assistant was a young engineer named Paul Stevens. He ran into the lab carrying data tablets. I have been running simulations all night, he said. If we can make the jump drives work, we can put them on our remaining warships. It would give us at least a chance to move fast enough to fight them. Lisa shook her head. The drives are not ready. We would need months of testing to make sure they do not tear the ships apart when they jump. We have 2 days. Then we skip the testing, Paul said. It is better to die trying than to die doing nothing. Lisa wanted to argue. She wanted to explain all the reasons why rushing the technology was dangerous and would probably fail. But when she looked at the determination on the young man's face, she realized he was right. Safety rules and proper testing were luxuries they no longer had. Humanity's survival might depend on taking impossible risks. All right, she said. Get me a direct communication line to the Pentagon. We need authorization to put these drives on every ship we have. And we need it in the next 6 hours. Above Earth on the Varix command ship, Supreme Commander Zareth looked at the blue planet below with boredom. This was just another primitive world, another harvest of resources, another weak population that did not matter. The Dominion had perfected the art of conquest over centuries. Find valuable worlds, arrive with overwhelming force, take everything useful, and move on to the next target. It was efficient, profitable, and completely routine. His tactical officer walked up with new intelligence reports. The humans are moving people out of their cities, the officer said. They appear to be preparing for a fight. Zareth smiled thinly. Let them prepare. Their defiance will make the conquest more interesting at least. Tell the fleet to stay in position. We gave them 48 hours. We are not without honor. When the deadline ends, we will begin bombing their military targets. If they still resist after that, we will show them what happens to worlds that defy the Dominion. The officer saluted and left. Zareth turned back to watch the planet rotate slowly beneath his ship. He had conquered 37 planets during his career. This would be the 38th. The humans would learn what countless others had learned before them. Resistance was pointless, compliance meant survival. And the Varix Dominion always got what it wanted. What Zareth did not know was that humanity had spent its entire existence fighting against impossible odds. Every step forward in human history had been earned through blood and sacrifice. Humans had survived by refusing to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. They were a species that had clawed its way up from caves to the stars through sheer stubborn determination, and now they were about to teach the Varix Dominion a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for generations. You could threaten humanity. You could attack humanity. You could even kill billions of humans, but you could never make them submit. The countdown had begun. 48 hours until war. 48 hours until the Varix would learn what human wrath truly meant. The deadline ended at 8 in the morning. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. The Varix fleet stayed in orbit, silent and threatening, while billions of humans held their breath in shelters and bunkers across the planet. Then the sky began to burn. The first attacks hit military bases with perfect accuracy. Weapons platforms in orbit that had taken decades to build were turned into clouds of debris in seconds. Naval bases, Air Force facilities, and army installations around the world exploded in pillars of fire as the Varix showed their technological superiority. Commander Daniel Morrison watched from the space station as Andrew Barnes, a young Marine assigned to the station, received word that his entire battalion had been vaporized in the first wave of attacks. The kid was barely 23 years old. He just stood there at the window with tears on his face and his hands clenched into tight fists. They killed them all, Andrew whispered, did not even give them a chance to fight back. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan worked with ground forces, sending them information and trying to find patterns in the Varix attacks. The aliens were being methodical, destroying Earth's military piece by piece, but they were not targeting cities full of civilians yet. That would come later once all organized resistance had been crushed. Commander, Kate called out, I am getting reports from the Pacific Fleet. Captain Richard Cole on the USS Franklin has started fighting back. Daniel rushed to her station. The Franklin was one of 3 carriers that had been equipped with Dr. Martinez's experimental jump drives overnight. If Cole was fighting, it meant the technology was at least working. Show me, Daniel ordered. The tactical screen showed the Franklin and her battle group making short jumps around a Varix destroyer. The human ships appeared and disappeared in bursts of distorted space. They were like small insects attacking a tiger. Their weapons barely scratched the alien shields, but they were moving, dodging, refusing to be easy targets. Captain Cole's voice came over the radio. His words were fast and urgent. All ships, focus your fire on their shield generators. We need to find a weak spot. Do not let them lock onto your position. The Franklin jumped again, appearing directly above the destroyer and firing all its missiles. Most were shot down by defense systems, but a few got through. They exploded against the shields in white-hot bursts. The shields flickered and weakened but did not break. "It is working," Cole shouted. "Keep hitting them. We can do this." Then 3 more Varric ships came to help their damaged companion. The destroyer's shields became strong again as the reinforcements opened fire. Space itself became a killing field. The battle group scattered, jumping frantically to avoid the attack. The cruiser USS Lexington never completed its jump. The experimental drive failed catastrophically in the middle of the transition. The ship simply ceased to exist, torn apart by forces it was never meant to endure. 800 sailors died in an instant. "Fall back," Cole ordered. "All ships retreat. We cannot win this fight." Daniel closed his eyes. The Franklin battle group had proven the jump drives could give humanity mobility. But mobility alone was not enough. They needed more time, more ships, more everything. What they had was courage and desperation, and against an enemy this powerful, that might not be sufficient. In Colorado, Dr. Lisa Martinez reviewed the data from the Lexington's destruction. The drive had worked for a few precious seconds, but the power requirements were too high. The stress on the ship's frame was too great. They needed to solve the stability problem, or every vessel with this technology would be a death trap. Paul Stevens worked beside her, typing on multiple keyboards at once. "I think I see the problem," he said. "The containment field is not strong enough to handle the transition energies. But if we boost the power to the field generators, we risk overloading the reactors." "What if we do not use our reactors?" Lisa said suddenly. "What if we tap into the energy of the jump itself? Use the dimensional transition as a power source instead of something that drains power?" Paul stared at her. "That is crazy. The energy fluctuations during a jump are completely unpredictable. We could make the problem worse instead of better, or we could stabilize the entire system," Lisa argued. "Create a feedback loop that actually makes the transition safer when it generates more energy. Let me run some computer models." Hours passed as they worked, testing theoretical models against computer projections. Outside the facility, the war continued. More military installations fell. More ships were destroyed. The number of dead climbed into the tens of thousands. Finally, Lisa looked up from her computer. Her eyes were red from exhaustion but bright with hope. "It works. In the computer simulation, at least, it works. The feedback loop stabilizes the containment field and actually reduces the power draw on the ship's systems. We can make this work." "How long to put it on the ships?" Paul asked. "If we send the modifications to every ship with a jump drive right now, maybe 12 hours, possibly 16. They will have to make the upgrades while under fire. Then we better get started," Paul said. On the Varric's command ship, Supreme Commander Zareth reviewed the battle reports with growing irritation. The humans had proven more troublesome than he expected. Their new mobility technology, while primitive, had allowed some of their vessels to survive longer than they should have. Several Varric ships had sustained minor damage, and one destroyer had actually needed help from the fleet. "This is unacceptable," Zareth said to his officers. "A species this backward should not be capable of even scratching our ships. Increase the intensity of the bombardment. Begin targeting their cities. Show them the price of resistance, Commander," one of the tactical officers said hesitantly. "The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. They wish to negotiate," Zareth smiled coldly. "Now they want to talk. Very well, put them through. Let us hear them beg for mercy." The main screen showed President Victoria Hayes standing in what looked like a bunker command center. She looked tired, but her eyes burned with defiance that surprised Zareth. "You have fought well," Zareth said, his voice dripping with condescension, "for primitives, but your resistance is pointless. Surrender now, and I will consider allowing your species to survive as workers for the Dominion." Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "I am not calling to surrender," she said. "I am calling to give you a chance to leave. Right now. Turn your ships around and never come back, and we will consider the matter closed." The bridge of the command ship fell silent. Zareth stared at the human leader in genuine shock. Was she actually threatening him? With what? Her species was hours away from complete military collapse. "You dare," Zareth began. "I dare," Hayes interrupted, "because you made a mistake, Commander. You thought you were harvesting a resource world. But you picked a fight with a species that has spent its entire existence fighting for survival. You wanted our resources. But what you are going to get is our wrath. And I promise you, Supreme Commander Zareth of the Varix Dominion, you will live to regret this day. The transmission ended. Zareth stood frozen, a strange feeling of unease creeping into his mind. It was impossible, of course. The humans could not possibly pose a real threat. Their navy was in ruins, their military shattered. But something in Hayes's eyes, some absolute certainty, made him wonder if perhaps he had underestimated humanity's capacity for violence. Begin full-scale bombardment, he ordered. I want this world broken. Now. The Varix fleet moved into attack formation, their weapons charging for a devastating strike. But as they prepared to unleash destruction on Earth, they failed to notice the subtle changes happening across the remaining human fleet. Ships that had been retreating from battle suddenly began moving with new confidence. The modified jump drives were coming online one by one. Humanity was about to show the Varix what happened when you cornered a species with nothing left to lose. The first sign that something had changed came when the USS Franklin appeared again in the combat zone. But this time the carrier was not running away. It jumped into position less than 2 kilometers from a Varix cruiser. That was close enough that the alien ship's shields interfered with its own weapon systems. Captain Richard Cole stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The modified jump drive hummed with steady power, nothing like the dangerous prototype they had used hours before. Dr. Martinez's upgrades had transformed their mobility from a desperate gamble into a real advantage. All batteries, fire at will, Cole ordered. The Franklin's weapons opened fire at point-blank range. Missiles and railgun rounds slammed into the cruiser's shields with concentrated fury. The Varix ship tried to return fire, but the Franklin jumped again, appearing on the opposite side and continuing the assault. Jump fire, jump fire. The human carrier danced around its larger opponent like a boxer overwhelming a stronger but slower enemy. The cruiser's shields finally collapsed under the sustained attack. Human weapons, crude but effective, tore into alien armor. Secondary explosions rippled across the Varix vessel's hull. She was not destroyed, not yet, but it was crippled, drifting and helpless. This is Franklin to all human forces, Cole broadcast. The modified drives work. I repeat, the modified drives work. Use the mobility, get in close, and hit them hard. We can hurt these creatures. Across Earth and in orbit, human forces that had been retreating and dying suddenly found new hope. More ships began jumping into action, coordinating their attacks in ways the Varix had not expected. The aliens still had superior numbers and firepower, but humanity now had unpredictability on their side. Commander Daniel Morrison watched from the space station as the tide of battle shifted. It was not a victory, not yet, but it was no longer a massacre. Human ships fought with desperate courage, taking terrible losses but inflicting damage in return. For the first time since the Varix arrived, humanity was fighting back effectively. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan coordinated the chaos, routing communications between scattered fleet elements and ground forces. Colonel Frank Peters on the ground in Texas reported success with mobile artillery units. They had portable jump devices that allowed them to fire on Varix landing parties and retreat before strikes could find them. Lance Corporal Andrew Barnes worked at his station, monitoring Varix communications that the station's computer was slowly learning to understand. Commander, he called out, the aliens are confused. Their tactical chatter shows they did not expect this level of resistance. They are requesting reinforcements from their main fleet. Daniel nodded. How long until those reinforcements arrive? Unknown. But their current forces are pulling back to defensive formations. We are making them cautious. Good, Daniel said. Caution buys us time. And time is what we need most. In Colorado, Dr. Lisa Martinez collapsed into her chair, exhausted but triumphant. The data from the modified drives showed stable operation across 90% of equipped vessels. The feedback loop was working even better than the computer predictions. Human ships were jumping farther more frequently, with less stress on their systems. Paul Stevens brought her coffee from the small kitchen. They are calling you a hero, he said quietly. Social media is going crazy. The scientist who gave humanity a fighting chance. Lisa shook her head. Heroes are the people dying up there right now. I just did my job, and we are not done yet. The drives are working, but we need to push them further. If we can extend the jump range, give our ships true interplanetary mobility, we could take this fight away from Earth. Hit the Varix where they do not expect it. Paul pulled up a star chart showing the local system. Intelligence suggests the Variks have a supply base near Jupiter. Supply ships, fuel depots, maybe even shipyards. If we could hit that, we would cut their supply lines, Lisa finished. Force them to commit more resources to defending their rear areas. Make this conquest more expensive than they thought. I like it. Get me everything we know about that base. On the Variks command ship, Supreme Commander Zareth faced a situation he had never encountered in his long military career. A primitive species was winning tactical engagements against his forces. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was unacceptable. How are they doing this? Zareth demanded. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They should be extinct by now. His science officer, a thin Variks named Kelrath, studied the tactical data with what might have been respect. They have developed a crude form of micro-jump technology, Kelrath explained. It gives them mobility that compensates for their inferior weapons and shields. Combined with their willingness to die for their planet, they have become formidable opponents. Then adapt, Zareth ordered. Develop countermeasures. I want those human ships unable to jump within weapons range of our vessels. Commander, Kelrath said carefully, that will take time. Days, perhaps weeks to implement across the fleet. And the humans are adapting faster than we thought possible. They learn from every engagement. Their tactics evolve in real time. Zareth slammed his fist on the command console. Then we destroy them before they can adapt further. Commit the reserve fleet. I want Earth burned to bedrock. No mercy, no quarter. We will show the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Dominion. The orders went out, and the full might of the Variks invasion force moved against Earth. 300 additional ships dropped out of hyperspace, joining the 200 already in the system. The sky above Earth darkened with alien vessels. Each one was a floating fortress capable of devastating a continent. President Victoria Hayes watched the tactical displays in the command bunker and felt ice settle in her stomach. They had hurt the Variks, proven that humanity could fight back, but now the aliens were bringing their full force to bear. No amount of courage or clever technology could stand against such overwhelming numbers. General Marcus Chen stood beside her, his face grim. We have maybe 6 hours before they are in position to begin systematic bombardment, he said. After that, our cities will burn no matter how many ships we destroy. We can make them pay for Earth, but we cannot save it. Hayes was silent for a long moment, thinking. Then we do not try to save Earth, she said quietly. We make them wish they had never found it. General, I want every ship we have armed with nuclear weapons. Everything from tactical nukes to old missiles. If we are going down, we are taking as many of them with us as possible. Nuclear weapons will not penetrate their shields, Chen protested. They will if we jump them directly into the enemy ships, Hayes replied. Use the drives. Make our vessels into missiles. Ram the warheads through their shields at point-blank range. That is a suicide mission, Chen said. Every mission is a suicide mission now, Hayes said flatly. The question is how many of them we can kill before we die. Get me volunteers. I suspect you will find thousands of them. She was right. Within an hour, every remaining human warship had a crew of volunteers, men and women who understood they were about to die but were determined to make their deaths count. They armed their vessels with every nuclear device that could be found, turning their ships into flying bombs. Captain Cole on the Franklin, Colonel Peters commanding a destroyer. Thousands of sailors, soldiers, and pilots preparing for their final mission. Above Earth, the Variks fleet moved into attack formation, confident of their inevitable victory. They had crushed countless worlds before. Earth would be no different. But humanity had one last surprise in store, one last act of defiance that would shake the Variks dominion to its core and announce to the galaxy that Earth would not go quietly into extinction. The final battle was about to begin, and it would be remembered for 1,000 years. The attack began at dawn, with the first rays of sunlight breaking over a planet that might not survive to see another sunrise. 50 human warships, each carrying enough nuclear weapons to level a city, jumped into the midst of the Variks fleet. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. Captain Richard Cole on the USS Franklin spoke calmly to his crew over the ship-wide intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor serving with you. What we do today will echo through history. The Variks thought Earth would be an easy conquest. Let us show them how wrong they were. All hands, prepare for final jump. The Franklin's jump drive powered up one last time and the carrier vanished from normal space. When it appeared again, it was inside a Varix battleship. It phased into existence within the alien vessel's command center. For a fraction of a second, Cole saw Varix officers staring at him in shock and horror. Then the nuclear warheads detonated. The explosion was visible from Earth. It looked like a miniature sun blooming in orbit as the Franklin and the battleship were converted to plasma and radiation. The blast wave caught two nearby Varix cruisers, overwhelming their shields and crippling both vessels. 3 enemy ships destroyed in a single attack. Across the battle space, 49 more human ships executed similar attacks. Destroyers jumped into carriers. Cruisers materialized inside command ships. Even damaged vessels that could barely hold together made their final jumps, appearing in the midst of enemy formations and detonating their nuclear payloads. The Varix fleet, so confident in their superiority, suddenly found themselves under attack from an enemy that was willing to die to kill them. Commander Daniel Morrison watched from the space station as the orbital battle space transformed into a graveyard. Human ships died, but they took their enemies with them. Each sacrifice eliminated 1 or more Varix vessels, evening odds that had seemed impossible just hours before. "They are doing it," Lieutenant Kate Sullivan whispered. "They are actually doing it." Lance Corporal Andrew Barnes monitored the enemy communications. "The Varix are in complete chaos," he reported. "Their tactical network is flooded with panic signals. They have never faced an enemy that attacks like this." Daniel felt tears on his face but made no move to wipe them away. Every ship he saw destroyed represented hundreds of lives, people he might have known, might have served with. But those deaths were buying humanity something precious: hope. The Varix were bleeding, retreating, their formation collapsing under the unexpected assault. On the Varix command ship, Supreme Commander Zareth watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. The humans were using their jump technology in ways no rational species would consider. They were turning their vessels into guided missiles and deliberately destroying themselves to inflict damage. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. "Pull back," Zareth ordered. "All ships retreat to safe distance. We need to rethink our approach." "Commander," his science officer Kelrath said urgently, "the humans are launching a second wave. More ships are jumping from Earth's surface and nearby lunar bases." "How many ships do they have left?" Zareth demanded. "Unknown, but they appear willing to sacrifice their entire fleet." "Commander, we must withdraw beyond their jump range. If they continue these attacks, we could lose half our remaining forces." Zareth's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Varix Dominion had never retreated from a primitive species. Never in 1,000 years of expansion, but the alternative was to watch his fleet be destroyed by an enemy that refused to accept its own inferiority. He made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Signal full fleet retreat," he said. "Move beyond effective range of their jump drives. We will bombard the planet from a distance until nothing remains alive on its surface." The Varix fleet pulled back, but the damage had been done. Of the 500 ships that had come to harvest Earth, more than 200 were destroyed or crippled. The survivors limped away to safer positions, their crews shaken and demoralized. They had come to conquer a primitive world, and instead had been bloodied by an enemy that fought with a ferocity they could not understand. In the Colorado facility, Dr. Lisa Martinez and Paul Stevens worked frantically on their next breakthrough. They had bought humanity time with the jump drives, but time alone would not save Earth. They needed something more, something that could reach out across space and strike at the Varix even in their retreat. "What if we could weaponize the jump itself?" Paul suggested. "Instead of moving ships, we move just the warheads. Jump nuclear devices directly into enemy vessels without risking our remaining fleet." Lisa looked up from her calculations. A jump-capable missile, it would need to be small, fast, and capable of penetrating their shields through dimensional transition rather than brute force. "Exactly. We already have the drive technology. We just need to make it smaller and attach it to existing warheads." "How long would that take?" "Normally months. With the entire military-industrial complex working on it, maybe 72 hours. But we will need to test it." "We do not have time for extensive testing," Paul said. "We will do one live test and then start production. If it works, we flood the Varix with thousands of jump missiles. If it does not work, well, we were not going to win anyway." Lisa nodded and began sending out instructions to weapons facilities across the planet. Humanity's industry is already running at maximum capacity. shifted to produce this new weapon. Every factory, every laboratory, every skilled worker who could be spared was put to the task of creating jump missiles. President Victoria Hayes stood before what remained of the United Nations Security Council. The past 72 hours had cost humanity dearly. Entire cities lay in ruins from Varric's bombardment. Casualties numbered in the millions and continued to climb. But Earth still fought, still resisted, still refused to surrender. The Varrics have pulled back to a position beyond our current jump range, Hayes reported. They are preparing for a long-range bombardment campaign. They plan to destroy Earth from a safe distance rather than risk their remaining fleet in close combat. Then we are finished, Director Samuel Park said quietly. We cannot reach them, and we cannot survive sustained bombardment. We bought ourselves a few more days, but the outcome has not changed. Not quite, Hayes replied. Dr. Martinez has developed a new weapon system, jump-capable missiles that can reach the Varrics regardless of their position. We will have the first production run ready in 24 hours. Within a week, we will have thousands. General Marcus Chen leaned forward. Can we produce enough to matter? The Varrics still have 300 ships out there. We can if we use them correctly, Hayes said. We do not need to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to make the conquest of Earth more expensive than the Varrics are willing to pay. Hit their command ships, their logistics vessels, their supply lines. Make every day they stay here cost them dearly. Eventually they will decide Earth is not worth the price, or they will destroy the planet just to prove a point, Park countered. Maybe, Hayes admitted, but at least we will die fighting. And maybe, just maybe, we will make the Varrics Dominion think twice before they threaten another world. Even if we fall, we can be a warning to the rest of the galaxy. This is what happens when you pick a fight with humanity. The Council voted unanimously to proceed with production of the jump missiles. Across Earth, the message went out. Hold on, help is coming. The war was not over yet. And in orbit, Supreme Commander Zareth prepared his fleet for what he thought would be a simple matter of reducing Earth to a lifeless rock. He had no idea that humanity's most devastating attack was still to come. The first jump missile test took place in the Nevada desert exactly 74 hours after Dr. Lisa Martinez thought of the weapon. A single missile, barely larger than a traditional cruise missile but carrying a compact fusion warhead and an experimental jump drive, sat on its launch platform. Technicians made final adjustments. Paul Stevens monitored the systems from a bunker 2 kilometers away. All indicators are green, he reported. Drive is stable, guidance systems are locked on target. We are ready to launch. Lisa took a deep breath. The target was an old satellite in low Earth orbit, something with no value, but large enough to confirm the missile could successfully complete a jump and explode at the right location. This test would determine if humanity's last desperate gamble could work. Launch when ready, Lisa ordered. The missile launched with a roar of engines, climbing into the sky at tremendous speed. At an altitude of 15,000 meters, the jump drive activated. For a moment, all sensors showed the missile simply vanished. Then, 3 seconds later, the old satellite exploded in a brilliant flash of light as the fusion warhead detonated exactly where it was supposed to. The bunker erupted in cheers. Lisa allowed herself a smile of grim satisfaction. It works. Get every production facility online. I want 1,000 missiles ready within the week. The industrial might of Earth, battered but unbroken, threw itself into mass production. Factories that had once made cars and appliances now made jump missiles. Every nuclear warhead that could be spared was fitted with small drive systems. Within 4 days, humanity had 500 operational jump missiles. Within a week, that number had grown to over 2,000. President Victoria Hayes stood in the war room looking at displays showing the Varrics fleet positions. The aliens had settled into a stable orbit beyond the range of human jump ships. They were systematically bombarding Earth's surface from a safe distance. Millions more had died in the week since the nuclear fury attack, but the Varrics were being cautious now, not wanting to risk their remaining vessels. General Marcus Chen pointed to the tactical map. Intelligence suggests the Varrics have a command hierarchy we can exploit. Supreme Commander Zareth commands from his flagship here. If we take him out, their entire fleet command structure could collapse into chaos. How many missiles would we need? Hayes asked. The flagship has enhanced shields and point defense systems. I would recommend a saturation attack. 200 missiles simultaneously from multiple directions. Some will be intercepted, but enough should get through to destroy the vessel. Do it, Hayes ordered. Launch the attack as soon as possible. Let us cut the head off this snake. 12 hours later, 200 jump missiles launched from sites across Earth. They climbed into the atmosphere, their drives charging, and then they vanished. Supreme Commander Zareth had exactly 3 seconds of warning before his flagship was engulfed in nuclear fire. The missiles appeared in a perfect sphere around the command ship. They jumped into position with precision that shocked the Varric's defenders. Point defense systems managed to intercept perhaps 30 missiles. The remaining 170 detonated simultaneously, creating a fusion reaction so intense it was briefly brighter than the sun. When the light faded, Zareth's flagship was gone. So were 2 escort cruisers and a destroyer that had been too close to the blast. The Varric's fleet command structure dissolved into chaos. Ships began receiving conflicting orders. Some wanted to retreat. Others demanded immediate revenge. The unified force that had come to conquer Earth fractured into competing factions. Commander Daniel Morrison watched from the space station as the battle reached its critical moment. The Varric's were reeling, disorganized, vulnerable, but they still had nearly 300 ships. Each one was powerful enough to level a continent. Humanity had hurt them badly, but the aliens could still destroy Earth if they committed to total warfare. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan received a transmission from Earth. "Commander," she said quietly, "President Hayes is broadcasting to the Varric's fleet on all frequencies. She is offering them terms." Daniel turned to watch his communications officer. "What kind of terms?" "She is giving them a chance to leave. Right now, no pursuit, no further attacks. They retreat beyond the solar system and never come back, and we will let them live." "Will they accept?" Kate listened to the alien responses filtering through her systems. "Some of them are ready to run, but others want revenge. They are arguing among themselves about what to do." Lance Corporal Andrew Barnes spoke up. "Commander, the computer has been analyzing their communications. There is a pattern to the responses. The ships that have been in the most combat, the ones that have actually faced human forces directly, they are the ones saying to retreat. The ships that have stayed in the rear, they are the ones calling for continued combat." Daniel understood immediately. The Varric's who had actually fought humanity, who had watched their comrades die in nuclear fire, and seen human ships sacrifice themselves without hesitation. Those veterans understood that Earth would never surrender. But the ships that had hung back, preserved themselves while others fought, they still thought victory was possible. On Earth, President Hayes waited for a response to her offer. Minutes stretched into hours. The Varric's fleet remained in position, their internal debate raging. Then finally a transmission came through. A Varric's officer appeared on the screen, someone Hayes had never seen before. "I am Fleet Commander Narix," he said. "With Supreme Commander Zareth dead, command has fallen to me. I have reviewed the tactical situation, and I have consulted with my officers." Hayes remained silent, waiting. "The Varric's dominion has conquered 47 worlds," Narix continued. "We have resources, technology, and military might beyond your understanding. We could destroy your planet. The cost would be high, but we could do it." "Yes, you could," Hayes agreed. "And we would destroy every ship you have in the process. The question is whether Earth is worth that price to you. Because I promise you, Fleet Commander, the price we will make you pay will be everything." Narix was quiet for a moment. "When you first defied us, I thought you were fools, primitives who did not understand their place in the galaxy. But I have watched you fight. I have seen your species sacrifice millions to defend your world. I have witnessed tactics and weapons I did not know were possible, all developed in days because you refused to accept defeat. So you will withdraw?" Hayes asked. "We will withdraw," Narix confirmed. "Not because you have defeated us, but because conquering Earth would cost more than it could ever be worth. You have bled us badly, human. You have destroyed 200 of our finest ships and killed tens of thousands of our soldiers, and I believe in my heart that if we stayed, you would find a way to destroy us all." Hayes felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she had been carrying for weeks. "Then go. Take your fleet and leave and never come back. Tell the rest of your dominion what happened here. Tell them about the world that refused to submit." "Oh, we will tell them," Narix said. "Every species in the Dominion will hear about Earth. The world that fought with such strength that an entire invasion fleet retreated in defeat. Your species has earned something rare today, President Hayes. You have earned the respect of the Varric's, and perhaps in time you have earned your place among the stars." The transmission ended. Within the hour, The Varix fleet began departing Earth's orbit. Ship by ship, they activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished into the depths of space. By the end of the day, the skies above Earth were clear of alien vessels for the first time in weeks. The war was over. Humanity had survived. But the cost had been staggering. 8 million dead. 20 major cities reduced to rubble. Entire fleets destroyed. The economic damage would take decades to repair. And the psychological scars would last for generations. Earth had survived, but it would never be the same. Commander Daniel Morrison stood on the observation deck of the space station, watching Earth rotate below. The planet looked wounded, scarred by bombardment and battle. Smoke still rose from burning cities. Entire regions were dark where power grids had been destroyed. But it was still there, still spinning. Still home. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan joined him at the viewport.
"What happens now?"
she asked. "Now we rebuild," Daniel said, "and we prepare. The Varix were not the first alien species we will encounter, and they will not be the last. But at least now the galaxy knows that humanity can fight, that we will not bow to threats or surrender to superior force. We have announced ourselves to the universe, and we did it in blood and fire." Lance Corporal Andrew Barnes approached them with a message pad in his hands. "Commander, we are receiving transmissions from deep space, multiple species reaching out to Earth, some offering trade agreements, some requesting diplomatic relations, and some warning us about other threats in the galaxy." Daniel smiled grimly. The galaxy had ignored humanity for years, dismissed them as primitives locked on an insignificant world. But now that humanity had proven they could fight, suddenly everyone wanted to talk. This was the reality of galactic politics. Strength earned respect. Weakness invited conquest. In Colorado, Dr. Lisa Martinez and Paul Stevens began the long work of transitioning from weapons development back to peaceful research. The jump drive technology that had saved Earth would revolutionize space travel. It would open the solar system and beyond to human exploration. What had been created in desperation would become the foundation of humanity's expansion to the stars. "We should patent this," Paul joked weakly. "Make ourselves rich," Lisa shook her head. "This technology belongs to humanity, not to us. Besides, I think we have been paid enough. We are alive. Our planet survived. That is payment enough." President Victoria Hayes addressed the United Nations one final time before stepping down from office. Her health had been broken by the stress of the war. She looked decades older than she had just weeks before, but her voice was still strong as she spoke. "We paid a terrible price for our freedom," she said. "Millions died so that billions could live. We must never forget their sacrifice, and we must ensure that their deaths meant something." The galaxy wanted Earth's resources. They came with ships and weapons and arrogance, thinking we would simply hand over our world. They did not understand that humanity does not surrender. We fight, we sacrifice. We pay any price to protect what is ours, and if pushed far enough, we will make our enemies wish they had never found us. The Varix Dominion wanted our resources. What they got instead was our wrath. Let that be a lesson to any species that considers threatening Earth. We are humanity. We have walked on the moon and split the atom. We have survived ice ages and world wars. We have built civilizations from the ashes of collapse and reached for the stars despite every obstacle the universe could throw at us. And now, the galaxy knows our name. We are not prey. We are not resources to be harvested. We are humans, and we bow to no one. Across the damaged planet, in cities rebuilding from ruins and in shelters where refugees still huddled, people heard those words and found strength in them. The war had been terrible, but they had survived. They had fought an empire that spanned star systems and forced it to retreat. They had proven that humanity belonged among the stars not as subjects or slaves, but as equals. In the months that followed, Earth began a transformation. The jump drive technology was adapted for civilian use. The first colony ships were designed, vessels that could carry thousands of people to new worlds beyond the solar system. Mars received its first permanent settlement. Mining operations began in the asteroid belt. Humanity spread outward, no longer content to remain on a single vulnerable world. The military rebuilt itself, learning from the lessons of the war. New doctrines were written based on mobility and asymmetric warfare. The jump missile became a standard weapon, stockpiled by the millions. Earth would never again be caught unprepared for alien invasion. Commander Daniel Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of the newly formed Space Defense Fleet. His first assignment was to establish early warning stations at the edge of the solar system. Humanity would have advance notice if anyone else came calling with hostile intent. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan became the head of the new Alien Communications Division, working to understand and translate the dozens of alien languages that Earth was now encountering. The galaxy was vast and full of civilizations, some peaceful, some hostile, all now aware of the small blue planet that had defied the Variks. Captain Richard Cole, who had survived the war by sheer luck when his suicide mission was called off at the last moment, became an instructor at the new Space Warfare Academy. He taught young officers the tactics that had saved Earth: jump and strike. Never fight fair, use every advantage, win at any cost. Years later, when human ships ventured into the galaxy carrying messages of peace and trade, they were met with respect rather than hostility. Other species had heard the story of Earth's defiance. They knew what happened when you threatened humanity. The Variks Dominion, once feared across 3 sectors, had been humbled by a species they had dismissed as primitive. In alien bars and meeting halls, in the councils of 100 worlds, humans were discussed with a mixture of admiration and caution. They were traders and explorers, scientists and artists. But everyone remembered that they were also warriors, who had turned their own ships into weapons, who had sacrificed millions without hesitation, who had refused to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. And in quiet corners of alien civilizations, a new phrase entered common usage. A warning, a reminder, a promise that echoed across the stars whenever someone spoke of Earth and its inhabitants. Do not anger the humans. Do not threaten their world. Do not mistake their offer of peace for weakness. They are kind until they are not. They are reasonable until they decide reason has failed. And if you push them too far, if you make them choose between surrender and annihilation, they will choose to fight. Every single time the Variks learned this lesson the hard way. They came for Earth's resources and got humanity's wrath instead. 200 ships destroyed, thousands of their finest warriors dead, their supreme commander killed, their conquest denied, all because they underestimated a species that refused to know its place. The surviving Variks told the story to their children, who told it to their children. It became a cautionary tale in the Dominion, a warning about the dangers of arrogance and overconfidence. Never assume a species is weak because their technology is primitive. Never assume they will surrender because resistance seems futile. And never, ever threaten humans unless you are prepared to pay the price. On Earth, memorials were built to honor the 8 million dead. Their names were carved in stone and metal, a permanent reminder of the cost of freedom. Every year on the anniversary of the first Variks attack, people gathered at these memorials to remember, not just the dead, but what they had died for: the right to exist, the right to be free, the right to say no to those who demanded submission. Daniel Morrison attended one such ceremony, now an old man whose hair had gone white with age. He stood before a wall inscribed with names, looking for friends he had lost in the war. Kate Sullivan stood beside him, her own hair now gray, both of them survivors of humanity's darkest hour and finest moment. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Kate asked quietly. "All those lives lost, all that destruction. Could we have found another way?" Daniel was silent for a long moment, considering the question. Then he shook his head. "The Variks gave us no choice. They came to conquer, not to negotiate. They saw us as insects to be swept aside. We showed them they were wrong. We paid a terrible price, but the alternative was extinction or slavery. At least this way we survived as free people." Kate nodded slowly. "I suppose you are right. And look at what we have become. Humanity is stronger now than it was before the war. We are united in ways we never were. We have purpose, direction. We know our place in the galaxy and we will defend it." They stood together in silence, remembering those who had given everything so that others might live. Around them, thousands of others did the same. Young and old, military and civilian, all united in memory and determination. Earth had been tested and had not been found wanting. Humanity had faced extinction and had emerged stronger. The Empire had wanted Earth's resources. They had come with overwhelming force, confident in their superiority, certain of their victory. They had made demands and expected compliance. They had underestimated the stubborn determination of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through countless struggles and setbacks. What they got instead was wrath. Pure, focused, unstoppable human wrath. and the galaxy would never forget the lesson that Earth had taught. You could threaten humanity. You could attack humanity, but you could never ever make them submit. They would fight to the last breath, sacrifice everything and drag you down with them if necessary, but they would never bow.